Well, we do begin here. National Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS briefing to Parliament has been postponed from today to an unspecified date. The meeting was supposed to have taken place at 2 p.m. this afternoon. NSFAS was scheduled to brief the Oversight Committee on Higher Education on its state of affairs in relation to governance and administration. Now, the Higher Education Minister, Dr Nzimande, recently dissolved the NSFAS board, citing its consistent inability to oversee the payments of student allowances on time by management, which has resulted in unnecessary stress for students and for their parents. For more on this, we're now joined by Dr Phethiwe Matutu, CEO of Universities South Africa. Dr Matutu, thank you so much for your time this evening. So NSFAS is, in a deep crisis and has been for some time. What role do you think, now that the board has been dissolved, the administrator, Freeman Nomvalo, has, to play here, to ensure that this matter is resolved? In fact, it's not only causing distress, some students don't even have accommodation as we speak.
Yeah, I think, firstly, thank you very much for having me. And good evening to the viewers and to yourself. I think the role is enormous on the part of the administrator. Firstly, just laying bare what the key problems for NSFAS are would be a big achievement, because up to now, from the NSFAS side, we have not received that kind of transparency. So I think coming from outside, that's quite crucial. And also having done so, then working with the key stakeholders, and that's government together with higher education and students, to try and resolve the problems of NSFAS.
So, just also the behavior from, some of the executives from NSFAS. Just in that introduction we read to you today, the NSFAS was meant to brief Parliament. They were supposed to at 2 p.m. They didn't show up, and that has now been moved to an as yet unknown date. In terms of accountability, some of the investigations into NSFAS and some of the contracting, that has been made there has really come under immense scrutiny, and it showed, some ill administration, tantamount to fraud. What do you make of just the behavior and the lack of accountability?
It's difficult for me to say there's lack of accountability, because my understanding is that after having had the report, there was a decision which was taken by the board, and that decision was to adhere to each and every one of the recommendations. The question is, what has been holding the NSFAS board together with the management from adhering to those recommendations? And that is the key question that should be answered, because it's possible that the new administrator will also be have whatever kind of impediments that the board has had. So it's important that we know what is holding them from implementing fully the recommendations of the Werksman's report.
You recently penned an article just literally targeting in terms of how this crisis can be turned around. And one of the things that you speak of is, of course, that the Higher Education Department, as you rightfully point out, needs to support the administrator in terms of just turning the situation around. You speak about universities' problems with NSFAS being categorized into issues with financial bearing on universities, system-related issues with NSFAS, and human capacity-related issues, as well as issues with the financial bearing on universities. Can you expand particularly on that last point?
The one on the financial, those issues which
the financial bearing on universities.
Those are enormous, and it's important that we hone in on them and we get them resolved as speedily as possible. If we're looking at the state of NSFAS right now, students who have applied for NSFAS, there are students who do not know whether they have NSFAS bursaries or not. The processing of those applications and the completion of that to a degree of accuracy has not been finalized. And that for us is a big problem, because some of these students have been admitted at universities with the understanding that they are going to get this NSFAS bursary. The criteria for that are put up front by NSFAS. We all know them. So when a student is saying that my application is being processed and here is my proof of income from home, some of the universities have taken those students, because you'll recall that NSFAS closed after the students had been registered in the middle of February. So to have a situation where that has not been done up to now is a huge risk financially for universities, because those students are sitting within residences and they are within the universities and cannot afford both tuition and accommodation. So that is point number one. And point number two is that there has been a capping of this accommodation. And this capping occurred last year. And there was a difference between this cap and what the universities were charging, leaving the students to owe universities money to the tune of about 600 million rand. And those amounts of money, they need to be settled. Otherwise, the students who are from financially needy backgrounds are going to be owing universities money.
I'm not sure. Dr. Matutu, I'm not sure if you saw, I think the last press release by the NSFAS also talking about challenges that it has with universities not onboarding onto its new administration program, which resulted in those shortfalls that we saw in April. It listed about 10 universities that, were not compliant or were late. I mean, what do you say to statements like that, there are also universities that could also, be blamed for some of the shortfalls that we are seeing?
I've shared with the new administrator the truth about that issue. And the truth is that the NSFAS systems, the IT systems are failing to a certain extent. So when the universities are submitting, firstly, they have to submit their qualification codes and their qualifications into their IT systems, the NSFAS IT systems. And when that happens, you'll find out that there are times when this IT system does not accept that data. And others started as early as November. By March, this had not been resolved. And once you fail to submit this qualification data, you can't put in registration data under those qualifications for students. And the problem then with NSFAS is the absence of the capacity, human capacity now to respond to these queries. Between November and March, you'll find out that universities have been grappling with this without any response on their queries from NSFAS. So there is a human capacity shortage, and at the same time, there is a failure in IT systems.
All right. Dr. Matutu, thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. That is Dr. Phethiwe Matutu, Chief Executive Officer and Spokesperson of the Universities South Africa.